And once again, it's Thursday at 3 p.m. here in the Eastern Time Zone, and you're with Dave and Sheila. Hopefully you recognize as Dave, and beside me is Sheila. I'm Dave Williams, your friendly weekly host of the Find Your New Normal broadcast. We're just having so much fun this season. In fact, in the green room, Sheila and I were just going back and forth of all the things that we're getting exposed to. And we're so grateful to our audience. And today we got some more people in our audience again with questions. And I've been given questions through email to bring up, because this is our question and answer show. As you know, what we try to do is have 3 or 4 shows and then take a break and then try to digest the content, because the content certainly is blowing my mind and I need a break to figure out what this transformative information is that I'm trying to digest. How about you, Sheila? Say hello to everybody and welcome everyone.
Hi, everybody. I am Sheila Schultz. My business is A Quiet Mind, and I help people through speaking engagements and retreats and workshops to move through transitions and see life in new ways and learn to be centered and be more mindful. So this has been an amazing season. I'm so excited to see the people that showed up today to be with us live, as well as everybody who's out in the audience who's going to watch us either now or at the replay. So let's get going, Dave. Let's get some questions answered and see where it takes us.
Well, as Cindy is mentioning, she's only got a short time with her. So Cindy, if I send you an invite, why don't you join us on camera and we can begin with you. For those of you who don't know Cindy, she is our guest 2 weeks ago and is an intuitive psychic and introduced us to angels and the help that they bring to us, and was just fascinating. You're getting your hair ready for us all. We are live on camera, and Cindy's coming in live from Virginia Beach. What's it like down there?
Well, besides we have a lot of jet noise today, it's a little chilly, but for us that means high 50s, low 60s. So
Brr.
You know, I can't come.
But you've been leading an active life. Those of you that don't follow Cindy's Facebook page, shame on you. You should be following her. She's been all over the place. I've been watching some of the replays of other presentations you've done since you've last been with us and passing on amazing information. And once again, talking about the 8-wheeler tandem truck that came along to show to you that there was another dimension paying attention to you. Before
Absolutely.
we get into the questions, let me just ask you to say hello to everyone and bring them up to speed with where your focus is.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm a psychic and spiritual teacher. My Facebook page is Cindy Griffith's Giving Back page, or cindygriffith.com is my website. And that 18-wheeler that Dave was talking about was me being frustrated with God and saying, "Are you there?" And an 18-wheeler God truck, guaranteed overnight delivery, drove right by me. And so, yeah, you know, sometimes spirit hits us in the head. Sometimes we get knocked in the head with the message. Sometimes it's subtle and we have to say, was that a message? And, you know, I'm just doing a write-up for prayer and meditation based on Edgar Cayce. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, did I get it right? You know, help me with this. Did I get it right? And to, you know, continue in your prayer for clarification. And so with that one, I didn't need it. That was really, really clear. But many times in my life, I haven't been so clear. And so I definitely recommend, don't be afraid to say, show me, or give it to me again a little clearer. So I guess. Well,
in fact, that was one of the questions that I received about your show, or your being a guest on our show, because those of you that aren't following us, although we're talking about some, you know, some very mind-stretching paradigms, we are trying to talk about how do you live in the present moment? How do you deal with your crisis in a tangible, practical way so that you can live a more joyful life, a happier life here? And we've discovered there are all kinds of resources that you can draw upon. One of our shows 3 weeks ago was with Andrea Jacques from Kiyosei Consulting. She can't be with us today, but will come on a further show. And she gave us a very pragmatic set of tools that she uses with people who are, again, dealing with life crisis moments and centering and gaining your power and dealing with life. With Cindy, the question was, so show me. It's great that there is a belief that you presented to us of an angelic world that we can tap into. And, you know, I'm a convert because I've had my radio tuned in every day to the various frequencies, tuning in my angelic force. I mean, I definitely have had some very practical examples of how I can tune in and get some things going. But the feedback I got was, well, that's all great, but that's all just spooky woo-woo stuff. How can that possibly be real? And I was a skeptic, and certainly am learning that if you are tuning in properly, there's another dimension that can offer some help. So your example of the 18-wheeler was a good example of someone talking to you, but how else can you help our audience believe that what you were talking about is true?
Well, one of the things I think is to ask at night when you go to sleep, to ask for your guide, your angel, to just sit with you for as you start to fall asleep, and then become aware of any shift in how you're feeling. It's not, you know, God doesn't usually, every once in a while, you know, sends an 18-wheeler, but usually, like I said, it's very subtle. And so if we can say, wow, do I feel a shift in the energy? It's not like all of a sudden it's going to get cold in the room or you're going to get hot flashes, you know. There just may be a shift in how you feel. And then maybe ask another night for a different angel or guide to come and see if you can start to identify the different shifts and changes around you. The other thing I feel so strongly about is pray and ask for validation. Pray and ask for validation. Can I say it one more time? Pray and ask for validation, you know, and because it does come subtly. You know, God comes in a whisper and we're living in a party, you know, where we're not hearing it. And so very often if we say, well, could that have been it? You know, ask for validation, and very often you're going to get validation. I've had more than and I don't remember, to be honest, which ones I talked about last time, but I literally had an angel lift my chin, and I could not put my chin down. I couldn't see the hand, but I could not put my chin down as that angel told me, you are strong enough. The time is now. I had someone pass me going 90 miles an hour telling me to put my seatbelt on. Well, who can see going by you 90 miles? Because I was going 80 something. So they had to be going at least 90 to pass me. Who could have seen even that I didn't have a seatbelt on, you know? And shortly after that, I got in a head-on collision. And, you know, if I hadn't put my seatbelt on, I would have gone through the windshield. So, you know, I think that we don't want to wait for the head-on collision or the, you know, severe cancer diagnosis. We don't want to wait. If we can start looking for those subtle things and be okay with, at first we may just need to believe or even pretend we believe to kind of get the pump primed, to prime the belief pump. And then as soon as you start showing a little bit of belief of maybe this can be true, my feeling is the universe will start putting it on more and more and thicker and thicker. So that's kind of how I would answer that question, maybe much more deeply than you intended.
Oh, that's great.
Cindy, you know, I've found, and there were so many things that I loved hearing from you on the show when we had you on. But when you were talking about awareness and you're trying to increase people's awareness and mindfulness, this is certainly a part of what I do as well. But really just letting people understand how fast they're moving through life and to get them to slow down enough so that they can then become aware and then start noticing and then being, you know, more mindful, because they just think mindfulness should be as quick as a click on a Google button. It should just be here. And they don't realize how they really need to slow down to about half speed of what they're normally doing, in my experience. And for me, that's what works.
A perfect example of that is, you know, I'm Weight Watchers, and which is why my hair's a mess. I just ran out, went to the meeting this morning, and didn't even look in the mirror. So anyway, I'm on Weight Watchers, and one of the things they tell you is when you're eating, put your fork down in between bites.
Yes.
Right? Have you ever tried that? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's a new world to me. You know, me, it was shovel, 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 and that's how we develop. Oh, thank you, Patty. I'm watching the comments. That's how we do. That's a wonderful way to develop mindfulness and to recognize how hard it is just to be mindful to put your fork down in between bites, and then recognize how hard it is, not impossible, and how rewarding it is. I mean, the meal lasts longer, it tastes better, you're full sooner. Think about if you could do that for life. If you can do that for your meal just by sitting and putting your fork down in between, what if you stopped your life from running this errand and that errand and that errand, stopped for just a minute in the car and did a little breathing exercise? Wow, what would you sense then? You know?
It's incredible. I do teach a class in mindful eating. So it's fascinating to see people realizing that you actually could keep food in your mouth a little bit longer than you think. Yeah. You know, the goal is not to get it to the stomach as fast as you possibly can, but that's unfortunately what we do.
But that's life. You know, how do we get to our destination? Whereas when we start to practice mindfulness, we recognize that life has nothing to do with the destination. It has all to do with the journey, all to do with how we get there, all to do with how we react with people. When we're rushing to the journey, to the destination, we don't even realize there's people. So, or flowers or whatever. And so, or angels, or all these wonderful things that we've been talking about. You know, and I think that it's in that, whether it's the dirty M word, you know, meditation or mindfulness, they both kind of go into the same thing. But if we take that time and put time aside, it's almost, especially if we do it at the same time every day, which is not always practical, it almost gives the universe the energetic space, gives the universe the space to enter into your life.
Right.
And that's something I think that's huge. Casey says you should wake up at 2 a.m. to do your meditation and prayer. I'm not quite on that boat, but you know, there's different people say different things, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to be a place and a time that feels right for you. You know, I'm a 5 o'clock morning girl, and that's early for a lot of people. 2, I don't know if I'd be able to do that. That's sort of.
And he says you have to wake up, like you can't like stay up till 2 and then meditate.
Right. Well, that's what Rumi says, right? Don't go back to sleep. Don't go back to sleep.
That's just one person's, you know, view.
Sure.
But it could be 3 p.m, and it may not be a meditation space. It may be that you excuse yourself from work and you get up and you go into the ladies' or gents' room and just have a sit for 3 minutes, and you do that at the same time every day, and spirit knows exactly where to find you, you know, and you've set up the energy, you've set up the expectation for something special to happen.
And that's true. And I think I've found also that once you start doing things like that, where you can just set up practice, you find yourself going into that space very frequently, even if it's for 10 seconds. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, just like everything. And then all of a sudden, your whole day is filled with these little tiny meditation moments. And then you just see things and feel things and are aware. And, you know, it's transforming.
Yeah. Well, that's the basis of my book, Soul Soothers, Mini Meditations for Busy Lives. How do we get our 20 minutes of meditation when we don't have, like myself, the patience? I'm too high strung to sit for 20 minutes, but I can sit for 3 minutes and I've got 21 minutes, you know. I can do 2 minutes. I have my new iWatch that has a breath thing, and it's just 1 minute. It's 7 in breaths and 7 out breaths. But you know, when I actually pay attention to my watch, it's great. It reminds me to set up that time. And if you can't find 3 minutes 7 times throughout the day to just set aside to take a couple breaths, or maybe even 7 1 minute, you know, then you're really not, you know, then you have to look at your life. Why is it so crazy that you can't do that?
Right.
One of the members of our audience who is highly religious gave me a phone call because they were intrigued by the discussion that you introduced on making a 911 call to angels. And he saw that as being very proactive. It was like, make a 911 call, get an answer. You know, my house is burning. I called 911 and the emergency forces come in. And his reaction was, being very heavy into his church, he felt that prayer and talking to Jesus was his way of communicating to that realm and getting help. But it was a very passive help. It seemed to be, you know, a prayer, but there was no result of action. Whereas talking to angels seemed to be like the workforce. If you can communicate to them, they make things happen. So I suggested to him, well, why don't you tune in to this concept of imagining there is an angel who is connected to your religious doctrine. We're not challenging that. But think of that person as the worker, if that's the way you're envisioning it. See if you can turn in the frequency and what happens. 3 days later, got a call that says it works. So,
Cindy,
who's to say that Jesus isn't the dispatcher?
Well, there's the point. Yeah.
Right. So there's not a limitation of who you can see at the other end of the phone call. But I think what it comes to, whether it's surrender or whether it's faith or whether it's just the who am I to say what's best, which is kind of my approach. But this way, we don't have to worry about who we need. We just need to say help. You know, I need help. And I'm not going to worry about where it comes from. I just want help. And you guys decide what's best, you know, whatever's for the highest and most loving good of all those concerned, or however you want to word it. But I'm so glad he got a result. So
yeah, it blew him away enough that, and so quickly, you know, within 3 days. I mean, because that was a Monday and that was the end of the Wednesday. So in a very short period of time, he called back and said, I got to pay more attention to this. There's something far more than what I thought, you know, about how I can communicate to my higher power. And I said, well, that's fascinating. And another person that's in that same day came back and was questioning, what is a guardian angel? If it's true that they exist, because she grew up believing that she was given a guardian angel. If that is true, what's their purpose? You know, if we've got a dispatcher now on a 911 call who can make things happen, is a guardian angel the same or a different purpose? And why are they with you from the day you're born till whenever? Explain more of guardian angel was the request.
The concept of guardian angel is that this angel is with you from the beginning. And I always see, I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, these memes of this old lady smoking a cigarette. It's like, my guardian angel was young and beautiful when she started, you know, now she's that's how I view mine. That this person is assigned to you, safety, to be there. Very often we are not, well, if you look metaphysically speaking, in the first few months of life, we are protected by the mother's aura. And that's our sense of protection. This is probably having nothing to do with what person's asking, but I think this is a good answer. We're protected by the mother's aura. But as we know, especially in this day and age, you know, moms go back to work, moms aren't always around. You know, it used to be grandma would take care of you or whoever, you know. Now who knows who's taking care of you. So I think the guardian angel plays even a bigger role now in life because we are not as protected. Now, I feel that the caregiver, like I don't feel it's a sexist thing. I think the dad's aura probably would do just as good of a job, or someone that has that love. If you think about it, it's probably the love that creates the protective aura, correct? So it isn't necessarily saying it has to be mom, you know, for all us abandoned, you know, people in our lives. So, but, you know, someone that's loving. But I think that that's where a guardian angel would come in more to play, especially in those earlier days. But I feel that that guardian angel's there forever. Now, but, you know, if you want the electrician, why call the plumber? You know, they may have been your go-to guy for all your plumbing, but if you want electrical work, don't call the plumber. And so my feeling is that the guardian angel is an overall good protective vibration, knows you from a soul birth probably previous soul births if you believe in past lives. But then we have these other guides and angels. And sometimes you need the plumber guide, not the electrician. Sometimes you need the carpenter, not the bowling champ. So, I think we always have different needs. And I think that these energies can help us in different ways.
Wow. And I'm curious to see what Curtis has to say about that when maybe we can get him on a little bit.
You'll bring him on right after, because I know Cindy's got to go shortly.
Yeah, I've got to go, and Dave's on, but he's got to drive me to go pick up my car. So,
so you both have to go. Okay. Well, you'll be able to check in with the replay and see what happened after you left.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Were there any other questions from the show that I can answer before I head out? I've got another minute or two, unless you want to pull somebody else on. I'm happy to.
I had one generic one that came in, was that angels were obviously there to help and protect. Were they protecting you from, since you've got free will and can make choices, were they're like Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder helping you make good choices? Or were they there to prevent you from car crashes and, disasters? Or were they, I can't read my own writing here now. That's terrible. or was protection, and I'll think of the other. So
that's okay. Well, let me give you my thought on that. Well, I feel like we have guides as well as angels, and I feel like the guides are the Jiminy Cricket helping you to make good decisions. I feel angels are basically protection. We have free will, though. We can. I could have not put on my seatbelt. That angel went by and gave me that direction, but I could have not taken it. And so we do have free will to walk ourselves into walls, I think, though, that, the closer you get to the wall, probably the louder the angel yells. I don't know if I would have gotten a second person driving by, with telling me to put my seatbelt on. But I do feel that guides are more the ones that guide us in choices and decisions, and angels are more protective. Some people will say that angels can't help you and guides can't help you unless you ask. I don't quite go with that, because I wasn't asking anyone to help me. Now, but we can look at asking on a conscious level, a mental health level, or conscious asking on a soul level. And so I'm sure my soul was saying, oh my God, get the seatbelt on this lady. She's not behaving, Same thing with, eating too much chocolate. I had an angel tell me, enough with the chocolate. So it doesn't have to be the big things. It can be the little things as well. I think that they're basically looking for your overall well-being. And I think the guides are more the ones that guide you in choices as far as making decisions and things like that. But
I just translated my writing, and the third one was to protect you from evil spirits, because obviously there's good and evil. And that was a question, Curtis, that we're going to ask you, because that came up on the questions for you.
Okay, well,
was about evil spirits. Well, no, I mean, give your perspective of how do angels protect you from the evil forces that exist here in this domain?
Boy, that's a tough one, David, because I have different feelings about evil forces. My feeling is if you're shining your light bright enough, you don't have to worry about that, but not in it doesn't exist, but in, and we can shine our light, we can raise our vibration through prayer, meditation, good works, energy work. There's so many different ways that we can do that. But I would assume, Archangel Michael is huge. He's standing on top of a demon with a sword. So, I would say that's definitely their realm. But my feeling about that may be different than some other people. I'm not a big, we have to worry about that too much.
So they're not putting, the conversation was, do they put an umbrella around you, a force field around you to bounce off those evil forces that are wandering the earth?
I would say that their vibration of love is so strong that I would think of more of evil as a low vibration than an entity. I guess that's the way I would work.
I feel very similarly. Yep.
You're vibrating at a high level, and love is the Patty's having a good time over there. If you're vibrating at a high level, which we cannot do at all times, You know,
Right.
look at what we've been going through the past week or so. We can't be at a high vibration all the time, but when we can be at the highest vibration we can, then we don't have to worry about that. But I think that this is why when you get depressed, you end up getting more depressed and more depressed, because
Right.
you've let down some of that high. Not that we're supposed to be happy all the time. That's not what I mean at all. But we have to be authentic. But when we allow that the negative thinking and the negativity to surround us, it ends up attracting what you might want to think of as evil things, attracting that lower vibration. I don't think of it as evil because I don't have that judgment of good and bad. It's
Right.
to me positive and negative in vibration level. But when you're vibrating, you know, at a lower vibration, you attract lower vibration. So to me, that's kind of how I would answer that. Now, when you are in a place of hope and faith and belief in an angel, and you're calling on an angel, you're automatically raising your vibration in order to do that. So is the calling on the angel coming and going, bad demon, you know, or is it that you're raising, by having that hope and faith and love, you're raising your vibration stronger, so that that lower vibration is now the weaker, not the stronger, and can't affect your higher vibration. I think that's more how I would see that.
Agreed.
But
We're creating our own force field. We have superpowers.
Sure, of course we do.
We absolutely
Yeah.
have superpowers. It is within our control. So with that, I leave you with love and light.
Oh,
And
thank you.
Thank you
I
for
gotta go
popping
get
in.
my-
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
That was kind of you.
anytime. I hope you invite me back again.
You-
So
Good to
thanks.
You're welcome anytime, by all means. Thank you
Take
very much.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You know, Dave, that's interesting. That's
It's Curtis is there while he's coming in. You and I can talk. Are you still there, Curtis, or have you bounced out? Or I'm looking for you. I'll just see if. Yep,
There he
he's
is.
there. Great. So I'll send him an invitation.
Yeah, you know, when she was saying that, that's kind of, I so agree with how Cindy was talking about that. The way I feel about it, because you know how much I am into presence, is that you can shine the light of your presence on the situation. And that always brings that higher vibrational energy. So that's my little say on that. I agree with her.
Well, the stage has been warmed up for you. Curtis Childs has joined us from the Swedenborg Foundation. Say hello to everyone and tell them a little bit about why you decided to come back.
Well, hey, I knew that you had my contact information, and if I didn't do it, you'd have me. No, so Swedenborg Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works to get the ideas of Emanuel Swedenborg out into the conversation, because you know, they could probably do a lot more good than they're doing right now, hidden away in irrelevance. So we're trying to see what can we get out of Swedenborg's material, and how can that make life better. And so I'm a little part of that organization.
So
Well,
what
we're
did you
glad
think
you
about
came
that last question about the good versus evil and how that works in guides and angels?
Sure. So can you read me the original question again?
Dave
We
has
went off
it.
into a couple of different directions.
Yeah.
They were really trying to understand the power that angelic force tended to exist, and whether they simply guided and directed you like Jiminy Cricket, or actually adjusted your ability to make free will and save you from personal disaster, or protected you from evil spirits. That in this question, they certainly believe that evil spirits wander the earth.
Yeah, and I was listening to the discussion about, you know, is it evil or is it vibrational, or it seems like semantics to me. I mean, we're talking about the same thing. We know that, you know, if you know, you're walking along, you see somebody push an old lady over and take her purse, whether you want to call that evil or low vibration, we know what it is. This is like not good. Like, you shouldn't do that. Like, come on. So I think you can apply any number of labels to it, but we're talking about the same phenomenon. And as far as that goes, the way Swedenborg describes it is we're always interacting with good and evil. If you think about the way that the body works, we are constantly on the immune system level waging little wars. You know, there are always microbes and viruses and whatever else, there's mold, fungi, trying to compromise the integrity of the body, right? That's always happening, and we're always fighting those off. And then we're always bringing healthy things into the body. We're getting sleep, we're drinking water, we're eating food. So there's always good and bad. I'm using these words right now in terms of the integrity of the body, something that helps it or harms it. So we'll assign those tags to it. We're constantly vacillating between those two, or those two are always in play. And the way Swedenborg describes good and evil is that spiritually the same thing's going on. It's not like you're going throughout life and on March 27th, there's an evil spirit that's going to try to get you, and then an angel intervenes. This is a constant equilibrium that's struck between good and evil that we exist in the middle of. And just like with the body, you don't notice it until the balance is out and microbes have gotten through the whatever mucous membrane or the skin, and suddenly you're dealing with illness. That's more the way that the negative and positive things showing up would be. That it's just suddenly we're conscious of the thing that's going on subconsciously all the time. So there's a first thought on it. Do you want to pry a little more into it?
Well, I just wanted to say that's the great thing that I took from our conversation last week, Curtis, was number one, it's all mirrors. It's the mirror of the body versus the big body. Yeah. And we talked about nature, but the real crux of it that really, makes so much sense to me is that this is all very intuitive. It's very practical and it's very simple. So, and everywhere you look, everyone you've read, whether it be someone from the 8th century all the way up to today, so it's saying the same thing. And it really is so simple. We were talking about this in the green room. Sometimes I feel like it's so simple that people don't believe that could be possible. That it could be, but how natural. Of course, it should be intuitive and simple and easy, but we make it very difficult.
If it's true, like, for instance, in my organization, we're looking at this recorded stuff from Swedenborg. If he's actually describing a reality that's timeless, just like if you were to go back thousands and thousands of years and describe the laws of physics, they'd still be the same now. So if he's really talking about something that's at play and underlying this experience we're having right now, a reality, it should, if I don't know if you guys like that word or not, but resonate. You should be able to feel like, yeah, because we're participating, and it would be a mix of things that are intuitive and counterintuitive. There's some things that you can hear about the way the body works or the way things work that you're like, oh yeah, that's amazing. But back before they went in and looked at how DNA works, nobody thought maybe there's a double helix in these tiny little pockets.
Right.
So you put it in the mix of like things that always felt like, oh, that's true. And then things that are like, what? But once you start to learn them, oh, that's elegant. That makes sense. And now I can fit it in with my larger picture. So we probably all had sort of the experience of both.
Elegant. There's another great word. That's perfect. Yeah. Elegant. It is. It's an elegant design. The whole thing. Elegant.
Yeah. Well, I think about, when they talk about science experiments that people try to figure out, and that if you can get one that's really simple but proves it well, I think they even call that an elegant experiment. That's something that's almost like there was and I'm going on tangents, but that's what we do.
So we do too.
There's so many interesting things to talk about in life. They were trying to test, this certain kind of I think it was a bacteria. What wavelength? Or no, it was a photosynthesizing microorganism of some kind, whatever. And they were shining a spectrum of light on this test tube. And they just like different colors on different sections, and they're like trying to figure out which one does this like, and you just leave that on the tube for a little while, and eventually all the microorganisms congregate in that band of light that they're attuned to. So that's like such an elegant way to find that out. It's just like a simple. So there's something about it's like, what is that Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is probably so there's, even though there's all kinds of complexity in life, there's something to it something about the truth that's like, oh yeah, that is how it works. And so I think that's part of, how do you vet this stuff on an individual level? If I can't do what Swedenborg did, if I can't have experiences on demand, how do I know, like you were saying, Dave, how do you know if it's true? I think there's all kinds of ways you can try to test it. But one of them is just to see, does it sound made up, or does it have this feeling? Compare it to other truths. I mean, do they seem to be part of the same set?
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times it's getting people past what they've always thought of, to be true. And once you get, like in my experience, once I realized that my life was nothing of what I thought it was, then it's like, well, gosh, now the door's wide open. Like anything could be true now, right?
Yeah.
So, I had gone through this life thinking that things were a certain way. When I found out that they weren't, all of a sudden, to me, it made it easier to embrace ideas that were kind of never embraceable before that.
Unembraceable, yeah.
Dave, do you have any other questions for Curtis?
I'm sure. Yeah. If people just bombard me after these shows. So Curtis knows he gets that at the end of his show every Monday night. In fact, people had loved your comments with us enough that they went onto your YouTube channel and they jumped into the interview you did with Howard Storm on Descent into Death, and brought the question up saying, that seemed to be difficult to grasp because the week before they had heard Cindy talking about angels, and here Howard in his end of near-death episode actually got pulled out of a very difficult, I guess I'm going to call it a fight with evil spirits who were pulling him all apart. And he was saved by Jesus, who came down, and then he had this in-depth conversation of the way Jesus saw the world and what the message was from Jesus to here on earth. And so he was saying, so is there in the Swedenborg way, since you interviewed him on the show, is there a doctrinal message that, yes, Jesus is part of the mix and has messages and will talk to people on earth, or is it the angelic forces that seem to be wandering around, as Cindy had talked about?
Cool. I'll do my best to wade into that. I would say both. That's
a very simple one.
Yeah. I'll give you the one-word answer. As Forrest Gump would say, both is happening at the same time. But here's what Swedenborg is. Swedenborg, one of the reasons he probably hasn't caught on is that he's too Christian for sort of a New Age or other perspectives. Too New Age for a Christian perspective. I could see that. He talks about Jesus Christ, and he places utmost importance. He says Jesus is God. Like you're talking about, Howard Storm was in this terrible place, right? He's getting torn apart by these horrific forces in this horrific way, and out of that he gets pulled up into Jesus, right? And Jesus is holding him like a person holds a person. And Swedenborg says, that's God holding you, and that is divine love in divine wisdom in a form that you can relate to, holding you there, right? However, we did this whole we've done multiple shows on Jesus Christ and Swedenborg's interpretation. So you have Jesus Christ, and Swedenborg says that that's super important, but that Jesus Christ is the incarnation of what he calls the divine human. So this is like the relatable part of God in front of you. So this is something that you can experience without having been present, with Jesus Christ on earth, or even understanding him by that name. You can still have met the divine human. Swedenborg talks about cultures, believe it or not, on this planet and other planets. He believed in extraterrestrial life that all knew this relatable part of God, and he would say that they're all in tune with this thing that we're calling Jesus here. It's not. You don't have to know the name of Jesus Christ in order to be saved. Like there's certain doctrines that he said, no, that's not how it goes. But we've done multiple hour-long shows about the concept. I'll leave my summary about it there. So what I would say is, people like a Howard Storm who like, Jesus saved me, yes, he did. And people who are saying these angels came and saved me, yeah, they did. Right. And what Swedenborg is saying is, angels, all their power comes from God. So those angels would not say, isn't that cool that I saved you? They would say, God is all power. Like God did this for you. I'm just happy to play my little part in it. So there's a few thoughts on that.
This really reminds me of the days that I'd go to Bible study and people would say, I'd say something and they'd say, no, that's not true. It's this. I'd say, exactly. We're saying the same thing. You're just putting it, I think people have such a concrete idea of something. And when you say something that to them it's the antithesis of that. But I completely understand what you're talking about because I've lived that.
Yeah, and I want to say particularly with spiritual ideas, meaning non-physical,
Right.
we tend to have even narrower understandings of those because it's not something we experience with our physical senses. Like if I was going to talk to you about, it's really hard to think of good metaphors, but let's say if I were to talk to you about basketball, and I said, listen, basketball is a thing where you have a basketball and you dribble it down and somebody shoots it and it goes in, and that's basketball. And somebody else was like, no, basketball is where you have the ball and one person passes it to another, and then another person steals it and passes it to the other end and scores. That's what basketball is. But if you've actually experienced basketball, you know, yes, both of those things can happen in a basketball game. There's a lot of different scenarios, but there are general, we have very simplified ideas of these spiritual things. But if I was trying to explain to you that, so the basketball metaphor is no good, but let's talk about, if I were trying to explain to you what government was, and I tried to, no, government is this thing. There's a huge, expansive, it's a giant thing you're talking about. So if we're talking about the specifics of angels and what can they do, even Swedenborg and everything that he wrote, you're just getting a little slice of it. The actual living experience of the thing, it's as complex as this life. Anything you're trying to explain in this life, you're just going to be explaining a part of it. But because it's all, for a lot of us, the spiritual stuff is theoretical, we can get really locked into like a simplified definition that really just centers around the language used rather than imagining this living concept.
Yeah, and don't you think that's why so many people talk about, forget about the language, you know, let's talk about silence and stillness, because that's where it's at, you know, and the Tao, you know, as soon as you try to explain it, then that's not it. So I think everybody along the way has struggled with this because you feel like you want to talk about it, but as soon as you use a word, that's not it. And
there's this tendency for people to want to argue about concepts, right? And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but Swedenborg talks about the importance of the primacy of love over faith in religion, and he talks about an era in human history. He doesn't give any kind of dates or specifics like that, but he says there were many different religions, but it was all one church. It doesn't mean that they had the same doctrines or ideas, but they all were led by this love that said that the core of their practice was, well, I see that you're a good person, and if you disagree, it's okay. I know we're both trying to do what's right. I'm paraphrasing that, but because that was first, even though they had different ideas about the specifics of I don't know, things like God or life after death, these kinds of things, he called them one church because that love was first, and that we can do the same kind of thing. That it's totally fine. It's totally fine to think different things than each other, and to not just because you think it doesn't mean I have to believe it. But you need to lead with a certain amount of love, or else you get what we have, today.
And you're certainly going to package things up based on your beliefs and attitudes. For instance, taking Howard Storm again, after I think you did that back in May when I saw it. And it intrigued me enough that I tried to follow what Howard had done over the last couple of years on other interviews. And in reciting his near-death experience in other places, he made a very strong point of saying in his discussions with God, it was clear that you must be saved by Jesus Christ or you can't go into heaven. And so he had packaged his near-death experience in a doctrinal package, whereas in the way you've described Swedenborg's experience in the other world, he was more of a scientific pragmatist. He spent years investigating, interviewing, debating, took notes, and came back and said, here's what I'm seeing, and didn't package it up. In fact, because he didn't follow the Christian principles of the 17th century, he ended up being labeled as a heretic. So the message I was taking away from your show and your guest or visit with us was this idea of these experiences that you're exploring are going to be packaged by your preconceived beliefs and attitudes. And you've got to somehow dive deep into yourself in order to investigate how you're thinking so that you can best use this spiritual experience that you're being exposed to.
Yeah, Swedenborg talks about God does not break the mental concepts that we have. He bends them towards what's useful. And Swedenborg describes an afterlife in which there are plenty of people who don't believe there's an afterlife. That really what you want to believe trumps what you learn ultimately. Meaning, if you're somebody who rejects these higher principles, then even though initially you might realize, oh yeah, I'm in an afterlife, you sort of put your blinders on. You can put your blinders on enough that you start to say, there is no life after that. There's nothing other than what's right in front of us. He describes an afterlife in which there are a plethora of practicing religions. It's not like you get to the other side and somebody says, okay, let's clear everything up. This is how things actually are, and that you're out. Change this. Here's a new hat for you. That's not it. And he even says that he even talks about sort of accommodated learning, that people are taught by people who either were previously in their faith tradition or are still in their faith tradition. So there's such latitude to move around with concepts. It doesn't just change there. And I would say, with what Howard Storm is talking about, you got to be saved by Jesus Christ. I think with Swedenborg, he'd say, what does that mean, saved by Jesus Christ? And what is Jesus Christ? We just think of Jesus Christ is divine love and divine wisdom. Right. So unless you're being saved by, this is a short version, we've done longer, but unless you bring love into your heart and wisdom into your mind, how are you going to achieve this state of heaven? So in that way, yeah. I mean, so there's an underlying universal reality that I think can be said by people in different ways, yet still be true to an extent.
Right. And that's where I get, how it's so important not to take things too literally and not to be so attached to very specific ideas, just to sort of let them float in and out and understand there can be 10 different definitions of something. And that's what to me, it's all about, is changing your perspective and changing your focus so that you can see different possibilities. It's amazing how much you learn when you are open to it. You feel better about it too. Life feels better.
Right. Well, in fact, that was one of the questions. It was, so Swedenborg had a great adventure and he wrote it all down. What the heck does that do for me? Why do I care? I'm going to die, and whatever is happening when I die, I'll deal with it then. Right now, I got to pay the rent. I got to take the kids to school. What in the world does Swedenborg have to say to me today?
Well, it's kind of like saying, getting a job, whatever, that doesn't matter to me at all right now. I'm in college, I'm taking my classes, I'll figure that out. Now, what you do now when you're in college drastically affects what kind of career paths are open to you when you get out of college. So what Swedenborg is describing is not like, he's not going and just explaining, giving travel notes to the afterlife. He actually only really started publishing those to get people interested in his other stuff. Because the core of his message is, here's how you live today in this moment in the way that is the most healthy for your spirit. So you're putting this foundation down that's going to serve you forever. This is how you do the game of life. And to get people interested, he's like, I'm going to tell you all about heaven and hell. He goes out and talks about the just to all corners of possibility. Here's all this interesting, beautiful, strange, comforting, bizarre stuff about the expansiveness of reality. But what it all comes back to is, here are practical ways to, in your life, move away from what's harmful, move towards what's good. And this is how we fix the heart and the mind, and from that, the world. That's people, we get questions about, does Swedenborg, teach you how to have spiritual experiences? He never writes about how he got, he gives little hints, but he never has a book like, here's how I induced my spiritual experiences, and here's how you can do it. He never does that. What he does all the time is tells you, this is what you do practically to live a better life. Even after Swedenborg was, absolutely traveling through wherever, astral space, all these places, the last thing that he wrote, one of the last things he wrote was a treatise on, I think it was mining for the government of Sweden, or maybe on metals or something like that. Like he still cared about what was happening in countries in this world. And he said that a spiritual life is not separate from the world. It's in the world. It's caring about civic things. It's caring about what you're doing for a job. It's caring about your relationships with other people. And that stuff is the foundation for a spiritual life. That's what's going to come with us when we go to this other world. Those are the seeds you plant that kind of get to grow there. So what you're doing now is of utmost importance. And Swedenborg, I think, in totality, is more of a practical guide to living in the moment than it is an exploration of the afterlife.
I could totally see that. And by the way, if you do all that, you are enjoying life more. You're living more fully. And I've had this discussion a lot for the last couple of weeks, but when you put your energy toward love, even in tough situations, when things around you are tumultuous and you feel like you're trying to change the world, right? You feel like you really have a passion for changing something. You still have to do it with love. You still have to do it with openness. So it's not just this, I'm against this. It has to be, what am I working toward? What am I for? So once again, that vibration of love just kind of shines the light on the path that's the best, easiest for you, easiest for people around you, and it gets what you aspire to as far as whether it's peace or helping communities near and far.
Yeah, absolutely. To do what is good because it's good, because you're thinking about the impact it does. You could boil all of the key to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I've got a final question for you before we let you go, and that's surrounding my personal interest in angelic forces. And the couple of the shows that you've done, you had very clear statements about Swedenborg watching the death process and identifying angels surrounding that body before it was in transition, that there was loving, positive angels around that person. And I think on one of the shows you said family members came in as well to guide that soul into the next stage. If that was as Swedenborg depicted it, is that something that always was the case? Because if so, what happened with Howard Storm? That didn't happen for him. He was wiped away by these evil forces. Where'd the angels go?
Yeah. So, but Howard wasn't actually on his way out. I mean, he was coming back, right? He was coming back.
NDE being different. Okay.
Well, because look at that experience and look at what that, particularly the negative part. If you hear him describe the effects of that negative part, this experience completely changed his life.
Yeah.
Right. And it's got to be that was the function of the thing the whole time. So I would imagine it's different. Swedenborg says for everybody there is this angelic guidance, although he'll make big sweeping statements and say it always happens this way, and then sometimes give counterexamples. So I would imagine that so many people, how many millions of people are making this transition every day or every week. There's probably variation, but he does say everybody, as a transition goes, it works in a certain way, and there are technical reasons for why. He talks about very briefly, since I know we're almost done, he talks about there are multiple levels of the mind, and the more you open those, the more you can come into this state of mind that's called heaven. And the deeper you are in that state of mind, the different kind of angel you are. So he talks about angels from the third state, the deepest state of openness, initially being around him throughout the dying process. And they are so deep that they just communicate literally with your heart, with your feelings, but also like this heartbeat of your soul. And that they are there shielding you from anything harmful and surrounding you in love, right? And this is keeping away anything, like think about it like a sterile operating room, that all germs have been wiped out of it. Just like that, there's no evil force is going to mess with you when you're in this little cocoon. As you begin to wake up, Swedenborg talks about then communing with angels of the second level, which those have to do with intellect and ideas and that kind of stuff. So there is when he began to see again. He was up and around. He was having conversations with them. And then from there, he talks about the progression as it goes. But it's not just like somebody's, hey, man, there's somebody, we have a case file here. There needs to be 5 angels. Will anyone go? we need to have angels with us in order for consciousness to exist. Like they're an integral part. If he said, if we have communication cut off, we would instantly just evaporate. This is part of the physics of the whole thing, the spiritual, the metaphysics of the whole thing. And so, so when the transition is happening, they're there, but there's order. There's a method to why they're there and what everybody's doing in every stage. Everything is very, it's about what's being accomplished. So everybody's got a part to play. Just like here, when we're talking about some kind of complex birthing process, you've got somebody, who's coaching or whatever the different roles are that are filled, or something like a surgery. Everyone's got to know exactly what they're doing, and there's a similar kind of precision, love, and wisdom present for these kind of processes.
He's just got some great philosophies. Patty's in the audience. Patty, have you got your headphones on? Do you want to join us? I'm sure Curtis could interact with you live. Sure, she says. Of course, Patty will join us. So let's get Patty on stage. And Curtis, Patty's involved with end-of-life transitions. She has doing death differently as her focus. There she be.
Hello.
Welcome,
Hi.
welcome.
Hi, guys. This has been fascinating. I'm madly writing notes and shaking my head and just talking to the ethers like, yes.
Yes, yes.
It's like if we could all be on an island, we would just like never, we would evaporate, because the angels would be like, oh my God.
Enough is enough. Right.
Well, you say that about all our shows. You're just one of our groupies. You just love
I am a groupie.
Yeah. Did you have any comment you want to ask Curtis about Swedenborg, or because you're very close to Swedenborg in your city?
I know. First of all, I don't know, where are you, Curtis?
Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here. I'm in Ben Salem, and 20 minutes from here is Bernathen Cathedral. Is that?
Yeah, that's across the street from me. Yep.
Oh, okay. And I noticed that Westchester is the national organization. I'm not sure.
It's the headquarters. Yep.
Okay.
That's where I went to college.
Oh,
There
yeah.
you go. Okay, and I know that Sheila was a partier, because that is one hell of a party school.
Oh, that's totally me. Yeah.
Well, Patty and Curtis can go for coffee because you're right across the street from one another.
I would love to. I didn't know you were here. Isn't that the amazing thing about technology? Like, at one minute you were nowhere in my sphere, and boom, here you are, and I'm like writing madly. One of the things that I love that you said was, and it feels like it could be a mantra, is primacy of love over faith. And to me, if we really practice that, like, what war could happen, what fight could happen. But as an old friend said one time to me, what did she say? I'm a sailboat looking for a storm. So I'd probably, pick some fight somewhere, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I find that fascinating because, there's so much. I mean, if you look at the Facebook page, that's so earth-based and so fear-based. And when I say earth-based, I also wanted to bring up semantics, because I do believe that semantics, let's say when you look at a Facebook page, I don't know how many people I've heard got into fights with each other, but they may have been closer than, in idea than they really were. It's just that, and I'll give you an example for me. And this is funny because I'm married to a Presbyterian minister, that's still, my friends are still like scratching their heads over that one. But when he says, or let's say traditionally Christian, mainstream Christian will say sin, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. I see it as error or missing mark, as I understand in like Aramaic was originally. But there are a lot of people that comforts in a way, because it gives them something to shoot for. For me, it's not as comforting because it feels judgmental, punishing, and that kind of thing. So, I struggle with those kind of things all the time, but the remaining open part, because if not, as Cindy said, when we're not open and we're fearful and we're putting it in a box, then that vibration, it's going down, and call it a demon, call it a energy signature, something's going to be affected by that. So I'm fascinated by it all. I've got notes all over this page.
Well, I'll play matchmaker because Curtis, Patty has a very active development program to train end-of-life doulas. And I think the Swedenborg message could be incorporated into the training programs that she's putting together. And since you're neighbors, it might definitely be worth a coffee. The two of you guys get to know each other and see where the Swedenborg Foundation might be able to provide knowledge to the training programs you're putting.
Yep, we have a doula on our board of directors, and we featured her on a show recently. So yeah, we can get my email from Dave.
Perfect. Well, I think it's so interesting because, you know, even doulas who are very open, obviously, to this work, and I work a lot with hospices. What I've noticed with hospices is that the conversation really ends with a death, and I've always wanted to bring it past this death because we know that, you know, death ends a life, not a relationship. And however that manifests later on, whether it's butterflies or booming voices from the other side or just a presence of recognition, it tells me that we're all something greater than this physicality that we have so much focus on. And it seems like it, you know, this focus narrows so much that, as you talked about earlier, those blinders, then you can't see what sometimes is right next to you, you know?
Yep. And I would imagine there's a lot of questions that aren't answered. I mean, I know when I face death, it's got me interested in researching these topics and starting to look at it. But in your field where you have people in end of life, they probably want to know what's happening to themselves, and their family may be wanting to know, you know, even something as standard as a deathbed vision. And where do you go to get information about what the transitions are going to be like, and where is the person moving on to? And Swedenborg, you know, has some ideas of what that could be explained by, and could be a very comforting module, if you will, to help people in transition understand what's really going on. Not just from intellectual nature, as in my case, but for people actually facing it right here and now. Help me, what's going on?
Sure. Well, you know, I think that's such an individual path, because there are some people who are so open to it. I've been with folks that are kind of chomping at the bit for what the next adventure is. They know they're going, and they've had this pretty expanded worldview, but they didn't just get there because they got a diagnosis. There was something, at least in my experience. I'm not saying that, you know, an instantaneous awareness can't happen, and we know that's happened as well. But in my experience, the openness level to this thing called death is many times riddled with fear. Many times that comes from their religion of origin or teaching, which is, I find fascinating, because, you know, I think fear of the unknown transcends, you know, even if you are devoutly practicing a religion that says you will have the afterlife, there's still probably some fear of the unknown. But I've seen it across the board. Mostly, though, if I had to say, I would say many times patients are more comfortable and ready versus their families. And then family dynamics adds a whole other thing to it, because sometimes, and in fact, there's another Philadelphia area hospice nurse who wrote a book called From Sun to Sun, Nina McKissack, and she talks about how in her experience, she might sometimes go into a room and the patient says, you know, or the family says, don't mention the H word, hospice, to the patient because they don't know they're dying. And then the patient says, don't tell my family because they think I don't know what's going on.
Right. I've seen that a lot. It's amazing. Right.
Well, look at the clock there, my friends. We're well past the hour, and I know we get together, we could go on for 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
We've got to be respectful to our guests and to those watching us and on the replays. So any final comments, Curtis, you'd like to make to our audience?
Thanks very much for having me on.
That's terrific. And Patty?
I wish I could be that succinct, but I won't be. No, I'm only teasing. That's beautiful. I just love this group. I love who you're connecting with, and thank you for having me be a part of it.
And Sheila?
Oh my gosh. See, every week it's something more. I just appreciate time as well. So I can be really simple in it. But I do want to mention one last thing, because we didn't really talk about Andrea too much, but she really, her work really does tie in with everything we talked about today, about how you need to work with life, how you are a co-creator, you're a part of it, and how you learn how to thrive in symbiosis, in that balance. So I just wanted to give her a little bit of a time here today, since she's not able to join us. But thanks everybody for joining us. Look forward to seeing you soon.
And we'll get Andrea on one of our next Q&As when her schedule allows it, so that she can come in and answer those questions.
Right.
But thank you on behalf of our wonderful audience. Thanks to the guests. Thanks to Cindy, who's out there getting her car serviced now. Hopefully it's worked well. Her angels are beside her, making sure it's a good repair job. And for all of you watching us, we wouldn't have the show without you, and we are so grateful for you attending. Hope we won't be here next week, because all my friends in the U.S. have Thanksgiving next Thursday. So we can't have that show, but we will be back December the 1st and carry on with our wonderful creative guest structure with mind-blowing discussion on how do you find the present moment when you're dealing with your life crisis. So see you all on Thursday, December the 1st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Bye for now.